Attention Pauper players! Many new strategies have risen in Pauper since the banning of Monastery Whisper, from new brews to previously unplayed decks. I will cover all you need to know about the new meta, but first, let's answer the big question. Is Mono Red dead? There's a significant difference when it comes to speculation to actual data, and today, we will talk about facts and numbers. So wrap up because the results might be mind-blowing. Or probably not. First up, remember when everyone was telling that Monastery Whisper was the culprit of Mono Red dominating leagues and challenges? And also that I told that it was not? Well, in January we've seen that out of 500 undefeated decks, Burn as an archetype was able to get most of the trophies under its arsenal, representing more than 10% of the meta and the most profitable deck of the month. What people don't tell you is that you also need to add the rest of the undefeated Mono Red synthesizer decks, and if you add up those percentages, it's add up to around 20% of the trophy meta. Almost a double of the second and third deck of the format, namely Coggates and Jeskai Affinity. Still, it's worth mentioning that this is a deck that has tons of explosive starts, and games can end relatively quickly, so one could argue that its success is determined by the number of reps the deck can pull into the league. And while that might be true, challenge data has some good and insightful data. For the last 8 challenges of the month, Burn hasn't won any yet, while the other decks, such as Dimir Control or Affinity, have 2 challenge wins each. Moreover, if you combine the first and second place results, Burn is left behind with only a second place finish, while Affinity has an astonishing 4 appearances on both first and second places, added up with Dimir Control as a runner-up with 3 appearances. Does this mean that Burn is dead in challenges? Well, not quite. If we change the perspective to look up the top 8 finishes, you will see that Burn has the most copies of the deck if we combine both Burn and synthesizer versions of the deck, which is somewhat acceptable if we take into account that the second most used deck, Dimir Control, has only appeared in the top 8 15.5% of the time. While we are here, it's worth noting that Affinity decks have made a significant appearance, but from version to version it's clear which is best, being the Grixis one the one with the better results, despite their lower usage rate, but most notably, the Jeskai version has been played a lot in the challenge and only managed to get into top 8 3 times, almost a 7% of the top 8 rate. But if you think that is bad, Azorius Affinity is not so far behind, as it has only appeared once in the top 8 out of 20 copies in these past 4 weeks. Data changes a little if we look at the top 32 results, which is what most people aim for during the challenge as it represents some sort of prize. But before I reveal the best deck of the challenges, remember that if you want to download this data sheet for free, you can check my Ko-fi link in the description, where you can find it alongside my cyber guides that are also free. Also, if you're enjoying the video, consider giving a like. Now, the big winner here is Dimir Fairies, with around a 60% of chance of getting into the top 32 for players that have been playing with it. Technically, there are other decks like Turbo Fog or even Insect Fairies that have made better results, but the copies of decks each made their rate a bit higher than normal. Coggates, on the other hand, is one of the most solid archetypes to get your hands on. Burn, however, has terrible numbers, with a 47% rate of getting into the top 32 based on both versions combined. What this means is that despite being slowed down, Burn is as present as ever, being the most used deck in both ladder and challenges, and is nowhere near dead as people may think. If I were to wrap up, the clear winners of this month are the blue decks, being Coggates the best option for leagues, with a solid 8% undefeated rate, and Dimir Fairies as a solid archetype for the challenge environment. If your preference is on Affinity, I will suggest running the Trusty Grixis version, as it's more reliable than the Jeskai or Affinity one. Lastly, a big shout out to the 2 decks that have taken January leagues by surprise, Mono Red Tron and Dredge. While they have yet to see significant play in challenges, there have been some appearances with a decent top 8 and top 32 results for both archetypes. And, of course, that time when I trophied with Judge Familiar and never tried since, except for this brave mono-white player who trophied with it. That said, by the time of this video, both Carbs and Calicais are dominating the Pauper leagues, so we'll see how they end up by the end of the year, but more importantly, what cards from Murders of Carlo Manor will be made shapers. Escape Tunnel, Novice Inspector, Demands Answered are strong cards right off the bat that can fit in different decks, but only time will tell where they fit the best in an ever-shifting Pauper meta.